We are live. Hello, hello. Welcome to the webinar. Um, I'm Tyler, and this is Kristen. We'll do intros in just a moment. If you are joining us live from LinkedIn, please go ahead and pop in the chat in the comments there. Let us know who's with us. Would love to see who's there. Just a quick technical note before we get into it, which is that we won't be able to respond to questions in real time, but we are going to have time at the end to go through all the comments in the chat and the questions. So please feel free to pop in the chat throughout the session. Let us know what's on your mind. We've got some prompts and things that are baked into the webinar today, so we'd love to get your feedback on those questions as well. And yeah, we're excited to kick things off. Are you ready, Kristen?
I'm stoked. Let's do this. Hey, everybody. It's nice to see you all today. Happy Thursday. If you are here, it's likely because you are feeling this pain too. That sense that the content marketing playbook we've all relied on for decades, over decades, is broken. And the pressure is higher and the results are less certain. And so it's making what we do feel unsustainable. And given that there's many of us that are joining this webinar today, I can tell you for a fact that you're not alone. Today, though, we're not going to just talk about the crisis. We will diagnose it and give you some more of our perspective on what's going on, but we're also going to give you a new methodology to lead you out of it. So before we dive in, as Tyler said, we're going to do a quick introduction of who we are today. Who are these presenters talking to you about this? Tyler, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much, Kristen. My name is Tyler. I'm the principal and the founder of the content marketing agency called Optimist. And for the last 10 years or so, we've been working with all kinds of B2B technology and software companies on content marketing and driving growth through content and SEO. And so, a lot of our work over the years has been focused on scaling content, scaling traffic and rankings, and a lot of it has been focused on sort of the standard playbook that many of us have been focused on. But really, over the last year or two, obviously, we've also seen many of the changes that have been happening, some of the shifts with the introduction of AI and changes in the algorithms and all the other things that are going on that we'll be talking about today. And so we've been working really hard on trying to figure out what the path forward looks like. And so I'm excited to share today what Chris and I have been working on and a lot of the insights that we've learned from our work with clients and our research together, Kristen and I.
Thank you, Tyler. And I'm Kristen Rocco, the fractional content marketing leader of my company, Bold and Noteworthy Marketing. And I help B2B marketing teams stop creating scattered commodity content that stifles your impact and start creating bold content that catapults you from copycat to category leader. And I have spent the majority of my content marketing career in corporate America in-house, looking at and facing all of those same hurdles and obstacles many of you are before transitioning to fractional content marketing leader a few years ago. And it's been so interesting, talking to Tyler over the last couple of months. We connected because we were like, let's talk about what's going on in our space. And we discussed the seismic shifts that are really happening in content marketing, as Tyler kind of ran through a minute ago. And we discovered that we share this very similar viewpoint that content marketing is under fire. And it's causing a crisis of confidence among internal teams and with the leaders who directly influence budget. And not only did we see the problem the same way, but we also discovered that we shared a vision for the way forward, for how to reclaim the business value of content marketing now that the era of SEO content is ending or is over. Let's see. So today we're going to cover a few things. We're going to look at the old content marketing playbook and discuss why it's broken. We're going to also give you some insight about the burnout that you're feeling and the goods. We're going to talk through a new methodology to build lasting authority and drive results in the new era of content marketing. All right, let's go ahead and get right into it. So if this chart on the screen looks something like you're experiencing, you are definitely not alone. This cliff dive is actually the chart, the organic traffic chart of HubSpot. They lost 80% of their organic traffic in a single year. That's from January 2024 to January 2025. Their organic traffic really nosedived. And what it indicates is that the connection we've always trusted, more SEO content equals more traffic, is now broken. And if we step back from our discontent that this is happening and causing us a lot of agita in our day-to-day, we can see that it actually teaches us an important lesson, that building a strategy around SEO is a house of cards. So why do I say that? This is a strategy you've been probably plugging along with for a really long time. Like I said, it's been working for decades. But have you noticed that if a competitor develops deeper topical authority than you, you're all of a sudden replaced in those top blue links? Or if Google completely changes its algorithm, you're also replaced until you figure out the new algorithm. And now, of course, AI overviews come into the picture. They're taking up the full scroll and you're replaced again. So it's kind of giving us this picture that trying to optimize for the algorithm is a shifting, kind of fluid thing that we are constantly reevaluating and having to rejigger. And it's really more of a tactic. It's not as solid of a strategy as we had thought. And of course, all of these changes with AI and SEO and zero-click searches are making things feel super chaotic, and it's really impacting the work that we're doing. So this is why, if you go to the next slide, Tyler, we are feeling burnt out. This chaos isn't just about metrics on a dashboard. And those metrics sometimes look terrible these days. I mean, all those like red arrows going down just make us feel so terrible. But it's also about the people. It's about you. We are stretched thin, trying to hit goals that feel increasingly out of reach. And the result of that is the staggering level of burnout that you see on your screen. I mean, our study found that nearly half of all content marketers report high or extreme levels of burnout. So let that sink in. I can't exactly see how many people are on this call right now, but it's almost half of us that are feeling or they're running on empty. So if you feel that, give me an emoji in the chat. And let's kind of go deeper into all of the challenges that are piling on. So look what's on your plate. This is 17 different contributing factors to why the constant challenges that we're trying to, to address, move forward on, make progress on. And you're fighting a war on two fronts. On one side, you're dealing with the fallout of the old model, declining traffic, and the pressure to keep feeding the volume machine, as well as strategic invisibility. And on the other now, you're facing a new set of challenges. There is a higher bar for quality and competitive differentiation in the age of AI. And of course, then the massive amount of uncertainty around AI as well. It's like, how do you integrate it into your business? What are the use cases? Do you even know how to use AI in the first place? I mean, are you getting the skill, the upskilling you need within your organization to even deal with all of this? And these aren't separate issues. They're compounding and creating a perfect storm for the burnout we just talked about. And it's also contributing to the fact that the path forward is looking more blurry than it has for a long time. So before we talk about where we're going, let's just spend a few minutes talking about how we got into this mess. Okay, so we have to understand the trap that we all fell into, and it's called the content factory. I wonder if you've all heard that term before. For years, the formula was simple. More content you wrote or you produced or you put out there equaled ranking for more keywords, and that would contribute to more traffic. It was this magic flywheel that we all, grew from. We all got results from, and Google rewarded this even when everyone's content looked and sounded the same. Right? Like if you look down the page on Google, the top 10 blue links are going to look pretty much the same. And so we turned this content into an industrial process. The primary KPI became output, volume, and velocity. And SEO fueled it. We got endless lists of keywords to target and competitor gaps to fill. And our strategy became a technical checklist to satisfy an algorithm, not a creative mission or a narrative to build influence and authority for our core expertise. And so the result of that is a flood of undifferentiated commodity content that all sounded the same. It also scattered but it also worked to scatter the customer journey, right? Because when you're trying to build a list build off of keywords, you can only go deep for so long. Then you have to start expanding wider, and that wideness actually ends up maybe disconnecting the customer journey, because no longer are you actually the expert and the authority on some of these topics you're talking about. But it didn't really matter, because at least we were delivering on the key KPI, traffic. And again, that flywheel was working, right? We got traffic to our site. We could count on some of those falling through the funnel and ultimately helping to drive some revenue. That was until AI came along and turned the content factory from inefficient with these random acts of content to now obsolete, where nearly 60% of searches are zero click and AI overviews are dominating the results. I'm sure that you've seen the studies, just like Tyler and I have, everywhere across the internet, and heard the webinars talking about this problem endlessly. And you don't have to just take our word for it, of course. The writing is on the wall. These leaders are talking about it. And even the greatest minds in SEO are recognizing the shift, which I find very interesting, right? iPullRank's VP of content made this point at SEO Week this summer. She said, the future of content is no longer just about clicks. It's about connections that resonate, engage, and endure. That's interesting. In other words, the ideas you share to build connections with your audience are what will steer content marketing in the next era. Some of these levers that we've been using at SEO, for example, and other channels and tactics are just that. They help us proliferate our message. But what really builds the connection that garners the trust and the influence and the authority is the message. And then there's Rand Fishkin's quote. I love this one. He's been out there pounding the pavement on this one for years, saying that content marketing is bigger than SEO. He's been critical about the over-reliance on SEO as a content marketing strategy for a long time. And that's for 3 reasons, he says. His research shows that Google is sending more and more traffic to fewer and fewer websites. So you're not even benefiting as much in the first place from Google. Then the search rankings don't necessarily lead to conversions, your actual goal. So just because you're ranking number 1 doesn't mean it's necessarily converting to revenue. And then finally, that a content strategy focused only on keywords limits your creativity and reach, causing you to miss more powerful opportunities to build your brand and drive business goals. And he makes the point, and he's right, that we tend to think that all day long people are sitting and searching on Google 100% of their free time. It's just not true. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but in my free time, I'm trying to Netflix and chill, or I'm reading my favorite publication or magazine or whatever. So your audience isn't just on Google. They are in other places. And when we're so focused on SEO, we are missing so much opportunity. So much of our creativity is not being utilized because we're solely focused on the singular mission. And so what happens is we end up finding ourselves in a strategy vacuum. So let me back up for a minute and say that you are in this content factory because SEO seemed like a solid strategy. Remember that flywheel we were talking about? More content equals more rankings equals more traffic. Now, with the model, though, no longer delivering the same results as it did a couple of years ago, you're now in a strategy vacuum where anything goes. I mean, without the strategic North Star, you're left with a sinking feeling that you're just creating content for content's sake because nothing's really moving the needle. And now you're consumed with scatter requests lacking clear connection to business goals. And so we find ourselves again, we've already talked about this, in the state of burnout. Our teams are unaligned and we're unclear about what to do next. If you can go to the next slide, Tyler. Cool, thanks. And meanwhile, so your team is feeling this way, but also meanwhile, not having a strategy to guide content creation is also leading to damaging outcomes. So while your content is all over the board and disconnected from a singular message, your brand is becoming more forgettable because you don't have anything to stand for that's unique. Your competitors who have a clearer point of view than you do start owning the conversation and generating the mind share from the audience you want to attract. And it's ultimately putting your core business goals at risk. And so all of this leads back to your desire for authority and autonomy. Thank you. When asked, so in our survey, we asked this really cool question about like, what if you had a magic wand, what would you ask for? And we saw this reality around autonomy and authority play out over and over again. Someone said they would shift the organizational value of content. We're rarely driving messaging and positioning, but we should be. Stop prioritizing arbitrary content cadences, like putting out our monthly minimum of SEO blogs at the expense of strategy. You see, the writing is on the wall, and for many of you, you never wanted to be trapped in the content factory in the first place. I mean, we're content marketers. Like, storytelling is our backbone. We love to be creative. We want to have endless possibility and potential. We don't want to just be strictly and solely focused on one channel. That doesn't make sense. We know our audience is in all of these different places. But as I noted, the SEO flywheel was too powerful for too long to resist. But now we're at a critical crossroads because it's no longer delivering the results that we had gotten in the past. And honestly, this is a career-defining moment for every person on this webinar. So we can continue to remain in this content factory that we've built, but is somewhat feels dissatisfying. And we really want to own and have a bigger voice at the table. We want to be more strategic. And you can continue managing that service desk and producing commodity content, but it's going to have diminishing returns. Or we can dismantle the content factory and reinvent not just content, but the role of content at your organization. And that's where the exciting opportunity comes in. And so Tyler is going to show you exactly what you can do to go from this purely industrial operational approach to content marketing to now taking more ownership of your message. So Tyler, I'm going to pass it over to you to step in.
Thanks so much for the setup here, Kristen. Yeah, I know, we've spent months now talking through this and going through the data and conducting this study and really researching and digging into these challenges. And one of the things that we were trying to understand as we did that was essentially, what does a better path forward look like? How do we take a step back and then take a step forward, right? And how do we choose a different path for content marketing, and what would that ultimately look like? And the clear message that we got from looking at what works, what has worked in the past, and what we think is going to work in the future, and also studying companies that have been really successful at content marketing throughout all of these changes, is that more content is not the answer, right? So continuing to focus on volume and velocity and output as a primary KPI is not going to get us from where we're at now to a new, better future where content marketing is effective and is a strategic force within your organization. And so what that means is that it's time for a fundamentally different approach to content marketing, and a different approach to how we think about, plan, and execute the content that we create. Um, as we dug through the examples and case studies, as I said, we focused a lot on the companies that had built sort of a more stable and enduring content program. And what did that look like? How did the companies that made it through the algorithm changes and dealt with the AI shifts and all of those things, what did that look like for them? And how did they do things differently? And one of the examples that we landed on was Dave Gerhardt, who's now the founder of Exit 5, but he was the former head of marketing at Drift. And Dave actually has shared a lot about his process at Drift and how they built their content strategy and how they built their marketing function. And one of the things that he shared was that as he was building his strategy, he did kind of a similar approach, right? He looked around at what have other companies done that have been really successful with content marketing, that have cut through the noise, that have escaped sort of this tactical treadmill of focusing on these minute details and instead had an enduring strategy. And what he found was that, the companies that were really successful, they didn't start with tactics or even a strategy, right? They started with a story, and the center, the heart of their content marketing was really focused on having this very clear explanation of what was changing in the market, why their product existed, and then how the specific product is going to help their customers solve their challenges in a new way. And then what that also means is that the role of marketing and content leadership is also shifted, right? That the role becomes about that narrative. How do we continuously reinforce that message? How do we continue to stay ahead and inform our customers and continue to expand on that story? Before I move on, please pop in the chat. We want to know, do you feel like you have a clear narrative or story that's driving your content strategy? I can tell you from our study, from the research that we've done talking to content leaders, many of them feel like they don't have that at the center. And instead, it is very tactical. It's very much about keywords and outputs and requests and fulfilling those sort of day-to-day tactical tidbits. And so the findings that we found as we dug into these and we researched these examples, we found several other companies who had a similar approach and a similar sort of ideology about how they approach content marketing. So some of the examples that we looked at were Gong, Basecamp, Drift, and HubSpot. And each of these companies had a very similar approach to content, in that their strategy was ultimately anchored in a new story, a narrative that they were owning in the market across all of these different channels, across all of the different functions within their business, and across all of the touch points in the buyer's journey. So, for example, Gong came out and created a whole new conversation around this idea of revenue intelligence. Not only did they create that as a product category, but they've created it as a narrative, as an idea about how people should think about their sales process and the data that they can extract from the conversations that their sales team is having. And so Gong really owned that narrative of revenue intelligence and what it means for your business. Secondly, Basecamp, one of my favorite examples, they simply rewrote the rules of work, right? They came out with these great manifestos, these books, Rework, Shape Up, and each of them told this really compelling story about how to build a company in a different way that sort of bucked conventional wisdom. And I think, again, they sort of set a clear vision and a path forward for how people can think about things in a new way and solve their challenges through new solutions. Second, or number three is Drift. We talked about them already, but they pioneered this concept of conversational marketing at a time where they were competing with probably 100 other tools that had very similar functionality, very similar features. That was not the way that they were going to win in the market. And so what they focused on again was the story, the narrative. How do we create a new concept that we can put into the market that draws customers to us who align with our thinking and who see this new path and this new way that's totally differentiated from all the other competitors in our space? So conversational marketing became their narrative, their North Star, and it went on to really power their entire strategy for as long as Dave was there, at least, and really became a hallmark of their brand. And lastly, I want to talk about HubSpot, which it seems maybe like a funny example as we use them. And I know, folks in the content marketing and SEO space have maybe been beating up on HubSpot over the last year or two with the news about their declining traffic. But if we rewind the clock a little bit, right, HubSpot has built a multi-billion-dollar enterprise entirely on a single narrative, right? They are likely the reason we are on this webinar together and we're talking about content marketing today because of their inbound marketing methodology. They came out and they said, hey, the way that we're doing marketing and the way that we're doing sales right now is broken. And here's a fundamentally new way. And it's called inbound marketing. And here's how it works. And that was the heart of everything they've done over the many years. And of course, that has propelled their business to the level of success that they have today. So those are some of the examples that we ended up looking at. And ultimately, what we tried to find in this research was, what's the through line and how do we connect the dots and turn this into a system or a process that other companies can replicate to achieve the same kind of success and to build that more strategic content marketing function that really lives on a narrative and is driven by a core story that defines your brand. And the process that we developed in studying these other examples is what we call the authority moat model. And so what I'm going to share now is what that process looks like with specific examples of how these companies have executed that over time and how you can apply a similar approach and a similar strategy to reinvent your own content marketing program. So first, let's look at the old way versus the new way. So what is the difference between the authority moat model and the way that we have been doing content marketing, probably for the last 10 or 15 years? First of all, the defining characteristic of the old content model, because so much of it was built on SEO, as Kristen mentioned, is that the content was interchangeable and disposable. Most of us were writing content that was incrementally better or incrementally different from our competitors, but was ostensibly the same content repackaged and our logo was on top. And it was a land grab, right? So the primary goal of that content was to rank for keywords, to generate that traffic, and then to hopefully convert that traffic at 1% or whatever our conversion rate metric might be. And because of that, the source of value, as Kristen said, became volume and velocity, right? The more content we put out, the more keywords we could rank for, hopefully the more traffic and conversions we can generate. That was the entire premise of many strategies that we all executed over the last 10 years. The business impact was largely measured on traffic and engagement, and the audience generally had a similar reaction, which was, hey, most content that I'm reading on a day-to-day basis, I've read it before. It's sort of rehashing the same topics. Maybe they have a slightly different opinion or they have some slightly different information that's included in this blog post, but ultimately I've read 10 different blog posts about what is content marketing, and they all say roughly the same thing. Okay, so that's the old way. Now, what's the new way? What does the authority moat look like? First of all, the defining characteristic is that the content that we create is unique and defensible. It's part of our DNA as a business, right? It's wholly differentiated from the content that's being created by our competitors or by anyone else in the market. And because of that, the primary goal is ideological resonance. We want people to read content and immediately resonate with the message that we're putting out, and knowing that message is unique to us. And so the more that people resonate with that message, the more that they will be drawn directly to our specific brand, our specific product, our specific solution. And the source of value here is what we call a transformative point of view. We're going to talk about what that means in just a moment, but essentially it's the central heart. It's the narrative, the story at the center of your content marketing strategy that sets you apart from all of the competitors and really builds that unique identity in the market. And the business impact of that is market transformation, right? We are carving out a distinct and ownable segment of the market of folks who align with our transformative point of view and who therefore are most drawn to our product and our solution, right? So we're not battling on keywords. We're not battling on commodity information. Uh, we're trying to fundamentally reshape the market to align with our vision. And finally, the audience's reaction to this is what we call radical clarity, which basically means, again, they read something that transforms the way that they think about their own problems, and they understand those things in a new way, and they see a new path forward that is fundamentally different from what conventional wisdom looks like. So now let's get into some of the specifics about how this functions, right? So the authority moat model is about transforming content into your brand's competitive moat. And what that's going to do is it's going to generate compounding business value because you're going to be able to own a message in the market that shares your specific vision and your specific worldview, and then demonstrates a new way forward for your customers. So what we want to do is we want to anchor the content in this transformative POV that clearly differentiates your brand from competitors, that creates that radical clarity for your audience, and then ultimately redefines content as a guiding strategy across your organization. So it's not just about fulfilling requests. It's not just about ranking for keywords. It's about shaping the narrative that defines your brand. And as a content leader, that becomes your greatest charge. So the authority model looks something like this, right? It's about turning that unique point of view into an entire content ecosystem, and then building a competitive moat that sets you apart from any and all competitors. So now let's break down what this authority model actually looks like and how you, again, can apply the process. Phase one is to define your transformative POV. So this is, again, sort of the heart of the content strategy. It's the singular perspective that's going to form the foundation of your authority moat, and then ultimately it's going to anchor your content strategy. So again, thinking back to the base camp and the gong and the drift examples, they all had a specific point of view, a specific idea at the center of their content marketing strategy. And it connected directly from their brand to the problems that their customers faced, and it provided a new path forward. The transformative POV, it comes from an inventory of your internal brand voice, your unique perspectives, your exploration of your audience's most pressing problems, your subject matter expertise, your product differentiation. It's why does your product exist and what does it do differently? What are your opinions about how your customers should approach their problems in a different way? That is where you derive this transformative POV. There are two main phases to this process. Number one is the excavation. So extracting that internal subject matter expertise, understanding what is the thinking behind this. Why do we build our product in this specific way? Why do we do these things differently than our other competitors? And what does that mean about how we view the world and how we view the specific problems that we're trying to solve? And then the second phase is the discovery. So the discovery is sort of the other side of the coin, right? We're looking at our audience's pain points. We're talking to our customers. We're trying to understand what are their problems and how do the unique perspectives that we have baked into our business, how do those things align? How do we connect those two dots into this transformative point of view that's going to set us apart from all the other competitors and give us kind of this ideological North Star for our authority moat? A couple examples of this, right? So going back to the Basecamp example, right? They wrote this book, Rework. If you haven't read it, amazing book. But basically, we can kind of boil the thesis down into this very simple concept, which is that a small, focused, and fast company can beat a big, sprawling, and methodical business. And they packed this book with examples, specific processes, insights and learnings and messages about this core concept. And that became kind of the ideological North Star. Secondly, we've got drift, right? We already talked about them a little bit, but the basic premise was B2B buying process has become cold and impersonal, and it's way more painful for buyers than it needs to be. And that's why they built their product in the way that they did. And that's how they wanted to solve the challenges in a fundamentally different way. Gong had this idea that the world has changed, and it's more critical than ever to have this accurate view of your customer's reality, and that with the access to data and facts, you can operate based on reality rather than opinion. So the old way was, hey, we're going to sort of wing it. We have a general idea of how our customers feel and think and act, and we're going to operate on that. And they said, hey, wait, no. The new reality, the better way forward is that we actually use data and we have a system and a structure in place to operate from fact rather than opinion. And so that was sort of the narrative that they put into the market. That was their transformative POV that shaped their message and shaped their product. Phase two is writing a transformation narrative. So this is what we call sort of the manifesto, if you will, of the strategy. It's basically laying out this transformative POV and what it means. And the hallmarks of a transformation narrative are first of all having an old way versus a new way, right? So you want to lay out what was the old way that things used to be done or have been done or are currently being done, and what's a new way? What's a better way forward? What does that actually look like? Explaining that to your customers, and then connecting the dots there by saying, here are the paradigm shifts that are happening in our industry right now that are driving the need for this new path forward. And then going from there to say, okay, what does that transformation actually look like? What are the steps that you need to take as a business in order to achieve that outcome? And then what is the outcome going to look like? What is the actual result from this transformation? So this screenshot here is literally from Drift. They use this very same structure in their own writing and their own content, explaining the idea of conversational marketing and explaining here's how people are thinking about content marketing right now, or sorry, thinking about marketing and sales right now. And here's this new customer centric way that aligns better with the current reality of customers and of the way people buy and make buying decisions. So phase two is to write that transformation narrative. I mean, it literally can just be, sort of a long form blog post sort of model. But the idea here is to just sit down and map out the entire story from start to finish. And then we get to phase three, which is where we start to think about constructing and deploying the authority moat. So the additional assets. So how do we build a strategy on top of this singular idea and this one narrative? That is where we develop the authority moat content plan, which is where we expand that narrative by creating unique assets, original data, processes, roadmaps, assessments, playbooks, unique second order content assets that build on that narrative and reinforce the message that we're putting out into the market. So you can see here in this Venn diagram, right, there are many different sort of combinations of content assets that we can create, but many of these are types of content that most of us aspire to create, perhaps as content marketers, but we don't really feel like we have kind of the direction and the clarity to create something as robust as an assessment or a playbook or a roadmap, and certainly not one that's differentiated from all of the other versions of that already exist on the web. So what this is going to do is going to give us the direction, the clarity to say, hey, here's our transformation narrative. Now, based on that, we can go out and collect data that substantiates these ideas or reinforces the message that we're putting out there. And then we can use that data to create an assessment to help our customers understand where they live in this current era of transformation and what steps they need to take in order to achieve a better outcome or a better path forward. Number two, we're going to think about messaging lenses. So the moat that we're going to create is ultimately something that's going to power our content strategy across many different industries, segments, buyers, right? We all know there's a complex process behind this. And so the messaging lenses are what we're going to use to adapt the messaging and adapt the content to position our message, our point of view to address specific problems or specific audiences. Then we're going to create a validation plan for how we're going to test and adapt that messaging in real time. And then ultimately, we're going to launch that campaign by thinking about or focusing on our highest value problems and our highest value audiences first and foremost. And then from there, we can think about expanding the moat further, right? So expanding and multiplying our moat is about building these assets that that compound on top of this transformative POV and this transformation narrative, right? So each content asset you create based on this point of view expands the moat and then compounds the value of the idea that we're putting out into the market, right? If we just publish one blog post about our transformation idea, that's not going to have much of an impact. But if we continue to build content out from that, we continue to increase the reach and the resonance and the impact that we're able to have and able to generate with the content that we create. So that's phase 5, is expand and multiply. Now, the authority mode transformation is ultimately drives transformation in 3 ways. Okay, so it's about process transformation, it's about outcome transformation, and it's about transformation in ROI, how we measure the impact of the content that we're creating. So before we get into each of those in detail, I want to just pause for a moment with this amazing quote from Chelsea Castle, who's the head of content at Close. She said, "Every single team I've ever joined is always reactive, right? They're just creating whatever everyone else in the organization says they should create." I think many of us probably resonate with that sentiment. And in the chat, we'd love to know, do you feel like you're more of an order taker than a strategic leader of content? What do you feel like your role really is in shaping content? And how would you like that to change? I'd love to hear from you in the chat on that. So let's talk about the 3 different types of transformation. Number 1 is process transformation. So this is about elevating content from a tactical function to a strategic function. And with that, elevating you as the content leader from an order taker to this strategic architect and the keeper of the narrative. So really embracing this idea of sort of a horizontal function, or a function that works across all of the other go-to-market teams. Content's no longer a silo or a pure service organization. It's about uniting the message and the narrative across demand and SEO and sales and brand and all these other teams that utilize the content assets that we're creating to make sure that everyone has the same message and is using that message in the most strategic way. That's going to lead to the outcome transformation, which is about aligning content with the buying journey. So you as the content leader are focused on building a cohesive story that unites the go-to-market function and builds trust with your buyers across their entire journey, right? So we all know how this works in practice, right? The Dream Data report here talks about how there's 7 decision makers, there's 76 touch points across 3 to 4 channels over the course of nearly a year in a buying decision, right? So across all of those various touch points and teams and channels, there are many different messages that your business is sending out there. And that creates a lot of confusion in the market, right? Because there is not a central narrative driving the content across your one sheet and your webinars and your blog posts. Many of your customers are engaging with messages that are sometimes radically different, right? They're talking about things in a radically different way, and that creates confusion. It certainly does not build trust, and it makes the buying process more difficult. And so what we want to do is we want to focus on how do we align all of these things to make the buying process as seamless and predictable as possible, and really build that trust and that loyalty throughout the entire journey. The final piece is the ROI transformation. So this is about how do we create value as content marketers? What is the value that we're actually creating for the business? And how do we turn that into a compounding asset rather than each blog post being treated as its own asset, and its that only value is how many conversions does it drive directly? Instead, we want to think about how do we drive revenue from the very first interaction? And the way that you do that is you have a cohesive narrative across every interaction, right? Every content asset contributes directly to pipeline because every content asset is aligned with the same narrative. So if I read a blog post on your blog and it teaches me one thing, then that message, if it carries through all of your other assets and all of your other touch points, that message creates compounding value throughout the buying decision and throughout the buying journey. And we know from data and studies that have been conducted, right, 90% of B2B buyers are ultimately going to choose a vendor from their day one list. So what that means is that our job as content marketers is to get in front of people before they're even thinking about making a purchase decision, right? And the way that we do that is we create content that cuts through the noise, that gives them a new path forward, that helps them understand their problems before they're out Googling what's the best content marketing agency, right? We need to reach them way before that happens. And then secondly, we know that 75% of decision makers and members of the C-suite say that a piece of thought leadership content is what led them to research a product or service or to begin a buying journey. So we know that the best way to do that, to engage with these buyers before they are in the market, actively in the market, is to create that thought leadership content that, again, helps them clarify, helps them understand their own challenges in a new way, to say, aha, I never thought about it that way. Now I understand, and now I see a better path forward. So that's really the power of the authority mode, is creating this new narrative for your customers to understand, and then carrying that narrative throughout the entire buying journey, so that we create this compounding value with each asset that we create, and each asset supports that same message and that same journey throughout the purchase decision. Whoops. So it all starts by defining this transformative POV, right? That will define your brand, and it will establish your competitive moat. That's the first step, is working with your team, working with your stakeholders to figure out what is the message that we actually want to own in the market. If we can be known for one thing, and we want people to associate us with a single idea that's going to help them better understand their problems, and find a better path forward, what does that actually look like? That's the first step. And then from there, we can start to think about how do we reorient the entire content operation to be strategically anchored in this concept that we now own in the market. That's the authority moat process. As I said, we want to leave time for questions. So we've got about 15 minutes left. Please, first of all, pop in the chat. Let us know what you're thinking about, what questions come to mind, what questions you have for us. We're gonna jump over there. We've got a little bit of a delay here on the stream, but we'll jump into the chat here in just a moment. But while we're waiting for the messages to come through, let me just mention the authority moat game planning session. So right now, if you're interested in applying this authority moat model at your company, and you want to talk through what that looks like, how to approach it, how to get buy-in, what your transformative point of view might actually look like, any of those questions, I want you to go to yesoptimist.com/moat. You can schedule a free, no obligation game planning session with Kristen and I. We'll jump on the phone with you. We'll talk through the process. We'll ask some questions and understand where things are at within your org. And we'll make some suggestions about how you can move forward, and how you can make this approach work for your business.
Thank you, Tyler. That was awesome. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Amazing. I've been monitoring the chat as you've been talking through the authority moat model. Unfortunately, we've had some questions come in. So let's go ahead and get started there. And then we'll see if there's anything else. And hopefully we can get through all of these in the next 15 minutes. Okay, ready?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Woo woo. Okay, so the first question is from Blair. She asks, who do you think should be involved in determining the transformative POV? Yeah, I love this one. What you got? And then I can step in too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the classic marketing response is it depends. But I think you want to kind of go as high in the org chart as you reasonably can. A lot of times, this is going to be derived from some fundamental thinking that might come from your CEO or your founder, or somebody who's really shaping the business at the highest levels. So I think, sort of as far up as you can, and then obviously, the getting the input from kind of the cross section of your other go-to-market functions. So your sales team is going to have insights about some of those challenges that we talked about. Your product marketing team is going to be able to provide insight about why they built specific features or functionality. So I do think it's definitely a team sport. I think you're going to have to involve a number of stakeholders to really get to something that people can agree on and rally around. I think that's the other thing too that we didn't really touch on in the webinar, but I think it is really important, is we want everybody to be bought into this, right? We want everybody to be aligned and really excited about this message that we're shaping and putting into the market.
Yeah, I don't know that I have so much to add there, Tyler. You did a great job of kind of framing that up, but also I think we called the determination of the transformative POV an excavation process intentionally, right? Because it does require you to, cultivate kind of a brain trust, so to speak, or a group of people, not just the marketing function, but really looking up and wide within the organization to hear out what everybody has to say across all these people and functions that have touch points with your customers. And
Mm.
And I think that's, critically important to the process of this transformative POV. Thank you for your question, Blair. Amanda asks, or let's see, maybe, yes, okay, maybe it's a comment. She says, important to note on authority moat storytelling is that this isn't necessarily naming a category or a problem. That can be part of it, but a transformative POV goes beyond that.
Absolutely. By the way, shout out to Amanda. Thanks so much for being here. But yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I think a lot of people talk about naming your customer problems and kind of creating some unique little slogan or tagline or something. Yeah, that can certainly be part of it. But I think that the transformative POV really transcends that in my mind. It's about the before and the after, the old and the new, right? The transformation that you're going to be able to create, or you're going to help your customers create, which is more than just here's your problem and here's a solution.
Yeah, and I feel compelled, although I don't know if it quite fits into this comment, to say that, I think there has been a lot of conversation around, story and message and your content strategy, being bigger than keywords and user intent. And, and premise development. There's been a lot of conversation around creating premises. And I think
Mm.
like what the authority moat model does is it actually goes beyond just saying, do this. This is necessary for your strategy, to then actually going into these different case studies and these different brands that have been doing this successfully for years, and
Mm.
dissecting it to say, okay, this is not just that you need to do it because it delivers results, but also how did they do it? And when we looked at
Yeah.
Gong, and we looked at Drift, and we looked at Basecamp, and all of these other examples that we've shared today, and there are many others, we have seen that these companies clearly do one thing very well. They say what the old way was, the
Hmm.
way that everybody's been operating, the conventional wisdom, and they
Hmm.
either give their opposing viewpoint or their different path, different way of thinking on that same problem, or they talk about what's missing. And
Mm.
that is a really firm foundation for creating this transformative POV that I wanted to highlight. Because it's like, everybody's saying, develop your premise or develop your POV, right? Like strengthen your perspective. Yeah, okay, great. But how? This is actually kind of going through the steps here, showing how to do it. So,
Yep.
all right,
Yeah.
next. Okay, so,
I
oh,
was gonna say
sorry.
that's like a perfect segue into Mallory's question. So Mallory asked, "Is there a difference between a transformative POV and brand positioning?" I think they're related, right? But I think at the end
Yeah.
of the day, the transformative POV again is sort of that the premise behind a narrative, right? It's about that transformation that we're going to create, which brand positioning can sometimes incorporate that, but I don't think it always does. I'm not a brand positioning expert, by the way, so full disclosure there. But I think a lot of times it does contain some of those sort of like lofty ideals and like aspirational elements, but it doesn't always get into sort of the tactical how and what and why elements.
Mhm. I also think the transformative POV does a better job of eliciting connection with your audience, engaging your audience in the
Mm.
conversation, right? Making them feel
Mm.
something, and contributing to uh, that new better way. I think that the transformative POV is a better way, or it extends the brand positioning in that it gives you the opportunity to further connect and resonate with the audience and bring them into your story, where brand positioning, as you kind of mentioned, is just maybe a little more static than that.
Mm.
um
Yeah.
all right, Pam now says, I think this is maybe a comment with a question hidden in, but hello, Pam, great to see you here. I feel like I lead the content development strategy, but struggle to get the experts who need to develop that content see the vision and execute powerfully. I spend a lot of time editing other people's content to fit the strategy and vision.
Mm.
The challenges of working with a lot of people.
Yeah, I will say I do think that's again going back to the kind of three modes of transformation here from the authority mode. I think that's part of the sort of process and outcome transformation elements, right? Is getting everyone aligned on what the core narrative message is of all the content that we're creating. And I think that gives you, again, kind of a North Star, kind of a single point of like, here's what we're trying to communicate overall in the content that we're creating, whether it's something that your SMEs are writing, or something that your marketing team is writing, or something that you're creating for your sales team, whatever it is. Just giving you kind of that anchor, I think is really valuable, and orienting everyone's thinking and execution.
I agree. I agree. All right. And Kurt, hello. um, he said,
Oh,
he asked, oh, maybe, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Hello. Tyler, can you hear me? Okay. Oh, I hear you, Kristen. Oh, thank you, Danielle. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Hi, everybody. I think we may have lost Tyler. I'm so sorry about the miscommunication on that. But if you're hanging in here, we really appreciate that you joined us today. Thank you so much. As Tyler mentioned, if you need some help brainstorming or have any questions about how to bring this to life within your organization, please get in touch with us. It is yesoptimist.com/moat. That's where you can book your game plan session with us. And I hope you all have a fabulous Friday, and we will see you again soon. Thanks for tuning in.
hello.
Oh my gosh, so lucky that was at the end of this webinar.